He cradled her trembling body, unaware of the law he had just broken. Her lips brushed his ear as she whispered, "Now I belong to you, by law, as your concubine." His breath caught. This was not diplomacy. This was desire. This was danger. The rain on Valaris Prime didn't fall, it shimmered. Each droplet glowed faintly in the air like liquid starlight, scattering off the metal streets and alien foliage like they feared the planet's touch. Commander Elias Rain had seen war on 5 moons, negotiated ceasefires between empires, and stared down more rifles than he could count, but nothing had prepared him for this world. Or for her. She was slumped in the alley, face blooded, breathing shallow. A crowd had formed. Silent and unmoving, Valerians weren't known for interfering in fate. Their eyes flicked from her broken form to him, waiting. Daring. He should have called for backup. Should have contacted the embassy. Should have walked away. Instead, he dropped to his knees beside her. Her skin was a pale lavender, streaked with blue as blood seeped from the gash on her temple. Her breathing hitched. A child, just a girl, no older than 10, clung to her arm, weeping in hushed whispers, trying to shield her with her tiny frame. "Help her," the child sobbed, in halting standard. "I've got you," Elias said, voice low. He scooped the woman into his arms, cradling her like she weighed nothing. The onlookers gasped, not in concern, but awe. Or horror. He didn't care. He carried her through the alleys, his boots pounding against the glowing stone, the girl at his side, until the embassy gates came into view. She woke in his arms once. Their eyes met. Her pupils were vertical slits, cat-like and gold. He expected fear. He found fury. "Fool," she rasped. "You don't understand." Then she passed out. 3 hours later, she lay unconscious in the medical wing, stabilized, healed. The child, her daughter, slept curled in a blanket in the corner. Elias stood beside the biomonitor, arms crossed, his uniform soaked and still clinging to him, heart racing for reasons he couldn't explain. The door slid open. She walked in like thunder. Counselor Vayana NYX. A name he'd heard whispered at diplomatic tables, always with respect, always with fear. The woman's presence filled the room even before her voice did. Her cloak glittered with nanothreads, and her eyes locked onto him like a targeting system. "You saved my blood," she said without preamble. "You do not yet understand the consequence." "I did what any decent man would do," Elias said calmly. "She was dying. And the child?" "The child is mine," Vayana interrupted. "And the woman you carried is my daughter. Averia." He turned slowly toward the still figure on the bed. Her face was cleaner now, bandaged neatly, the harshness in her features replaced by a strange, sleeping peace. "She would have died," he said. "I didn't know who she was. Valerian law is ancient and sacred. You acted as a rescuer in public. You held her as one would hold a mate. You allowed no witnesses to intervene. You claimed her life into your hands." Elias's brow furrowed. "Is that forbidden?" The counselor's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "No. But by law, for saving a noble daughter's life, especially in such proximity, she is to be bound to you." His heart stopped. "Bound? How?" "As a concubine," Vayana said, voice like crystal breaking. "You now own her by honor. She will fulfill her duty. She will belong to you. Body, name, and soul." Elias took a step back, as if struck. "What the hell kind of law is that?" "An ancient one. Written in blood and fire. One you invoked the moment you picked her up and brought her here. She will not protest. Her dignity depends on obedience." "I don't want to own anyone," he said sharply. "She is yours nonetheless," Vayana replied. "Rejecting her will shame our house. Her daughter's standing. Everything." The girl stirred in the corner, soft and sleepy. "I will return with a formal decree," Vayana added, already turning. "Prepare your quarters. She'll be moved by morning." The door slid shut behind her. The silence that followed was thick, choking. Hours passed. He didn't sleep. Morning light crept through the glass panels of his quarters, painting the floor with threads of gold. He was standing by the window when the chime sounded. The door opened. She stood there, Averia, dressed in ceremonial black silk, her posture impossibly straight, her expression unreadable. Her long white hair was braided down one shoulder, shimmering with embedded gold strands. The only color on her was the deep violet of her eyes. She stepped in, slowly, barefoot, graceful, and closed the door behind her. "I am yours now," she said quietly. He turned. "You're not." She raised her eyes. "You don't understand." "I do understand," he said. "And I refuse. This law is wrong." Her face twitched, just barely. "And if you refuse, I lose my daughter's name. Her future. I become a disgrace. An exile. A used object that no one else may claim." He swallowed hard. "You don't want this." "No," she admitted. "But I will do it. For her. For duty." They stared at each other, an arm's length apart, yet galaxies away. Her next words landed like gravity collapsing a star. "I don't ask for affection," she whispered. "Only shelter. Only silence. You may ignore me. Use me. Or do nothing. I will fulfill what's owed." His fists clenched at his sides. He couldn't look at her without feeling 1,000 emotions crashing at once: pity, anger, confusion, desire. "You're not a thing to be owed," he said tightly. She stepped closer. "But I am." Then she reached up, undid the clasp of her silk robe, and let it fall. "Tonight," she said, voice trembling slightly, "you will have me. Because you must. Because if you do not, this bond cannot be fulfilled. And everything falls apart." His breath caught. She was beautiful, alien, and exquisite, and heartbreakingly human all at once. He stepped forward, lifting her robe silently from the floor, draping it gently back over her shoulders. "No," he whispered. "Not like this." She looked up at him, eyes wide, lashes wet. And for the first time, her voice cracked. "Then how?" she breathed. He didn't answer. Because he didn't know. There was a time Elias Rain believed he understood what loneliness meant. He'd been a soldier, a diplomat, a father separated by light years from his child, but nothing had prepared him for the silence that followed Averia's arrival in his quarters. She moved through the embassy like a shadow dressed in moonlight. Silent, graceful, cold. Her bare feet barely made a sound on the polished floor. She never addressed him unless spoken to. She never sat unless invited. She never slept unless told she could. She was there. And yet, she wasn't. She kept to the smaller guest room in his private quarters. The door always remained open, yet Elias never stepped inside. Something sacred, or maybe broken, seemed to hover just beyond the threshold. Some nights he'd catch her standing by the tall glass windows, staring out at the distant Valerian mountains. Her silver hair would glow under the pale moons. Her silhouette was so still he often wondered if she breathed at all. He never touched her. Not because he didn't want to, but because every time he looked at her, he saw a woman caged by her own culture, trapped beneath silk and ancient law. And the more he tried to act like she wasn't there, the more impossible it became to ignore her. One evening, 4 days after her arrival, she spoke without prompting. "Why do you deny me?" Elias looked up from his desk. The lights were dimmed, casting soft shadows along the walls. She stood in the doorway of his study, arms crossed in front of her, robe cinched tightly around her waist. Her eyes glinted like amethysts, unreadable. He set the datapad down. "You make it sound like I'm refusing something I'm owed." "You are," she said flatly. "By every law of my bloodline. Every word of my world. I don't want a woman by force. You didn't take me by force. You saved me. And now, by our customs, I must serve you. I didn't ask for a servant." "No," she whispered. "But you asked to save me. And this is the price." Elias stood. Slowly. Carefully. He approached her, stopping just short of touching distance. "You know what I think," he said, voice low. "I think you're not angry at me. You're angry at them for turning your life into a law." She flinched. "And now you punish yourself," he continued, "by pretending you want this when you don't." She looked up at him. Her expression broke only for a second. But it was enough. She swallowed. "I can't go back. Not now. Not after this. My mother made sure of that. Even if you refuse to lie with me, the bond is declared. I will never marry a noble. I will never hold rank again. I am concubine in name even if untouched. He stared at her. Then maybe we rewrite what that name means. Her eyes narrowed. You'd keep me here? With no intimacy? No submission? I'd rather earn something real from you than own something fake. Her lips parted slightly. She didn't respond. Just turned and walked away. That night, Elias found a plate of warm food outside his door. He never heard her footsteps. But he knew it was from her. The days passed. Tension softened into curiosity. They spoke more about Earth, about Valaris. She told him of her daughter, born in secret after a forbidden love affair with a lower-ranked soldier. The father had vanished in war. Her daughter's name was Siva, which in Valerian meant the first light after collapse. Elias shared stories of his daughter, Freya, sick with a genetic blood disorder Earth medicine couldn't cure. The reason he'd come to Valaris in the first place was for their medical technology. The rumors that Valerian bioware could reset DNA patterns. Save lives. You came to trade with my people for her, Averia said quietly one night. I came to beg, he replied. You should have just taken the technology. Then I'd be no better than the laws that bound you to me. She smiled, small, but real. The first time. By the second week, she no longer stood silent in corners. She no longer asked for permission to sit, or speak, or breathe. She no longer wore the ceremonial robes. She wore herself. One evening, Elias came home from the Senate chambers, exhausted and sore, only to find his quarters darkened and lit with soft candles. Averia waited at the dining table, a dish of traditional Valerian fruit spread before her. Siva sat beside her, glowing with joy. I thought, Averia said, that perhaps we eat together. If not as master and concubine, then at least as people. He smiled. I'd like that. They sat a day. They laughed. They poured strange wine. Siva fell asleep at the table, face sticky with syrup. Later that night, Elias found Averia alone in the atrium, her hair loose, her dress rippling in the warm breeze coming from the air vents. You're not what I expected, she said softly. Neither are you. She turned to him. The way the shadows curled around her eyes made his breath catch. You're the first man I've ever known, she said, who didn't want something from me. He stepped closer. That's not true. She raised a brow. Oh. I want you to want me. Silence. Her throat bobbed. I don't know if I can want anything anymore, she admitted. I've lived a life that's always been chosen for me. Then let's choose this, he said. She stared at him. Then took one step closer. And another. Her fingers brushed his chest, slow, uncertain. He didn't move. Didn't touch her. Until her lips touched his. Soft. Voluntary. Real. And just like that, the line between them shattered. He cupped her face, pulled her in. The kiss deepened, hungry and cautious all at once. A breath shared between two lives rewritten. She pulled back, barely. Her voice trembled against his mouth. If we do this, it's no longer duty. He rested his forehead against hers. Then let it be everything but duty. The first time they made love, it wasn't urgent. It wasn't performative. It was reverent. Averia's fingers trembled against his bare chest, not from fear but from the weight of something unfamiliar. Something forbidden. Elias kissed her like she was something he hadn't earned yet, like she might vanish if he touched her too carelessly. When she whispered his name, his true name, not his title, something cracked inside him. And when she cried afterward, silent tears sliding over her cheeks, he didn't ask why. He just held her tighter and let the room listen to her breathing return to peace. It was the first night she didn't retreat to the guest room. And the last time she called herself concubine. Days became different after that. Averia walked through the embassy like a woman reborn. She laughed more. She took Siva out during the daylight instead of keeping her hidden in their private wing. She even visited Elias during formal meetings, elegantly dressed but without her ceremonial markings, as if to say, I am with him, but I am also me. The diplomatic staff began to talk. Quietly, respectfully, but with growing curiosity. What was this human doing, changing the customs of a planet not his own? What was this woman, once a noble shadow, becoming under his roof? And then the whispers turned darker. 2 days after Elias filed a formal request to access restricted Valerian medical technology, someone tried to kill him. It happened in the garden atrium, where the light-filtering panels mimicked Earth's sun. Elias had taken to doing paperwork there while Siva played nearby. A shadow moved where it shouldn't. A glint. A pulse. A soft whir of tech charging in the breeze. Then, a blur of motion. A body collided with his. They tumbled. A flash of plasma sizzled past his face and struck the marble behind him. When he blinked, she was on top of him. Averia. Breathing hard. Weapon drawn. The attacker fled. Not a word, not a face. Gone in the wind. But the message was clear. You were trained, he said once the embassy's internal security had locked down the area. She didn't meet his eyes. Her hands shook as she reholstered the small blade hidden in her robes. I was an echo, she admitted. Before I became a noble's daughter again. Before Siva. His blood ran cold. Echo agents were legendary Valerian women trained in psychological subterfuge, seduction, and defense. Beautiful weapons. Living ghosts. Nearly all of them died during the Shadow Purge over a decade ago. You were a soldier. I was a spy, she said flatly. My mother buried my records to prepare me for marriage. When that failed, she used me as a bargaining tool instead. And you never told me. I never thought I'd need to protect you. They stared at each other. Siva, still oblivious, played nearby, gathering glowing flowers with the innocence of someone who didn't know how close death had come. Elias stepped forward, took her hand gently. You're not just my lover, he said quietly. You're my shield. Averia tried to pull away. He didn't let her. And I won't let anyone break you again. That night, while Siva slept in the adjoining room, Elias held Averia tightly in their shared bed. She had her head against his chest, her arm across his stomach, and for the first time in years, she slept like someone without fear. But Elias didn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, thinking about his daughter back on Earth. Her tiny, frail hands. The wheezing in her breath. The way she always smiled when he called even from across galaxies. He couldn't let her die. The Valerian biotech archives were his only chance. But his request had already been stalled by the council 3 times. And now someone had tried to silence him. The next day, he did something dangerous. He asked Averia to help him break in. It was madness. Political suicide. Treason, even. But she didn't hesitate. I know a place, she whispered. Deep in the archives. Even nobles can't access it without genetic keys. But I still remember the echo codes. Under cover of night, they left the embassy in a cloaked transport. Averia wore her old echo gear, slim, black, form-fitting armor etched with faint sigils of her defunct unit. Elias wore his diplomatic credentials like a weapon, ready to lie through his teeth if needed. They infiltrated the central archives, dodging drones and bypassing locks. Averia moved like smoke, like a forgotten ghost reawakened for one last mission. Finally, deep beneath the marble towers of the archive city, they reached the vault. Elias's breath caught as she placed her palm on the biolock. The door opened with a hiss. Inside were racks of crystalline data spires, each one holding centuries of medical advancement. She scanned until she found it. A single glowing shard. Genome Stabilizer Protocol. Batch 8.4. Adaptable for hybrid bloodlines, she read. That's it, Elias whispered. That's what she needs. He took the shard just as the silent alarm triggered. Go. Averia yelled, pulling him back. They ran, ducking energy fire, scaling back corridors, barely making it back to the ship. As they launched into the night sky, alarms screamed across the city below them. You just became a criminal, Elias said breathlessly, hands shaking on the controls. She leaned over, brushed his temple with her lips. So did you. They didn't speak until they were safe within embassy space again. Back in his quarters, Elias stared at the shard glowing in his palm. I can send it to Earth tonight. Freya will live. Averia exhaled, long and slow. But there was no joy in her face. You know what comes next, don't you? Yes, Elias said softly. The council will call for your recall. Or your execution. They can't let this go unpunished. And you? She looked at him, unreadable. They'll strip my name. My daughter will be exiled. I'll be declared void-born. He reached for her, voice breaking. I'll take you both with me. I'll protect you. Her eyes shimmered. You already have. They held each other like time was about to rip them apart. Because it would. And yet, they both knew. There was no turning back now. The news hit the diplomatic channels within hours. Human diplomat breaches archive security, Valaris Senate demands immediate sanction. The headlines didn't mention the daughter. Or the law. Or the truth. The story had already been written for them. Inside the embassy, Elias watched the emergency orders scroll across the holographic terminal. His diplomatic status had been suspended. His access revoked. A summons issued: either return to the Valerian High Tribunal for sentencing or face forced extraction by military escort. There would be no trial. Only judgment. Averia stood across the room, hands folded tightly in front of her. Siva clung to her mother's side, sensing the tension in the air even if she didn't understand it. They'll come soon, Averia said, voice low. I know, Elias replied. He turned to her, taking in every line of her face. Every freckle across her collarbone. Every breath, every second. I won't let them take you. She smiled, broken and bright. I don't need saving this time. The plan had been simple: transmit the medical shard to Earth using an encrypted backchannel, get the cure into Freya's bloodstream, and disappear before the council could retaliate. But things had changed. Averia wasn't just a woman bound to him by law now. She was his partner. His equal. And she'd risked everything, her rank, her daughter, her name, for a man who should have walked away. Now it was his turn. Elias stepped forward and cupped her face in his hands. Run with me. She flinched. Elias. Earth has open skies. Space to breathe. A daughter who needs her. We'll hide. We'll start over. They'll hunt us. Then let them. But they'll never find you. I'll keep you safe. I swear it. For a moment, she was silent. Then, quietly, like a leaf falling into water, she said, yes. Within the hour, the embassy went dark. The AI systems Elias had once used for diplomatic negotiations now served a different purpose, cloaking their vessel's launch signature, faking personnel logs, scrambling visual data. Averia moved like a soldier again, dressed in plain traveling leathers, Siva bundled against her chest. There were no silk robes, no formal goodbye. Only 3 people left that building alive. And none would return. They blasted off at midnight, soaring through the upper atmosphere of Valaris Prime, the clouds glowing beneath them like oceans of fire. Elias gripped the controls. His heart thundered not from fear, but the weight of knowing this was the moment everything changed. As the stars widened around them and Valaris fell behind, Siva woke in Averia's arms and asked sleepily, "Where are we going?" Averia kissed her daughter's temple. "Home," she whispered. 3 days later, they reached Earth's orbit. A contact from Elias's past met them in a covert landing zone outside the ruins of an abandoned lunar base, one of the few places still invisible to cross-planetary trackers. Freya waited in a sterile capsule. Pale. Weak. But alive. When Elias walked in, she blinked her large, dark eyes and whispered, "Daddy." His throat closed. He dropped to his knees beside her, holding her small hand like it was the only thing anchoring him to the universe. Averia watched from the doorway. Quiet. Soft. Crying. The treatment began immediately. The biotech Elias had stolen risked everything for, fused perfectly with Freya's DNA. It would take weeks, but already her pulse had stabilized. Her color returned. The doctors, human and Valerian exiles alike, called it nothing short of a miracle. She'll live, they told him. He didn't need to hear more. He found Averia on the terrace that evening, looking out over the lunar horizon. Earth rose in the sky like a blue jewel, spinning quietly in the distance. "You're free now," Elias said gently. She nodded. And yet. He stepped behind her, sliding his arms around her waist. You still feel owned. Not by you, she whispered. By what I've lost. What I had to leave behind. He kissed her shoulder. You still have your name. No, she said, turning in his arms. I have something better. He looked down into her eyes. What? Love. And he kissed her, slow and deep, as the stars watched in silence. Months passed. Freya ran through fields again. Siva learned to braid her hair like Earth girls did. Averia began working with refugees and former agents, helping those who had also escaped Valaris's crushing traditions. She was no longer a noble. She was no longer a concubine. She was Averia Rain, by her own choice, not law. And Elias? He wasn't just a diplomat anymore. He was a man who had finally found peace. One evening, in a garden blooming with strange flowers and earthlight, Averia watched their daughters play in the grass and turned to him. Do you remember, she said, the moment I told you I was yours by law? He nodded. You looked at me like I was breaking something in you. I was, he said. And now? He leaned in, brushing her cheek with the back of his hand. Now you're mine, he said softly, by love. Not law. She smiled. And this time, she kissed him first. Final line. You saved my daughter, Elias said, pulling her close. And you saved me, Averia whispered. Not by law, by love.